been watching our videos, you might remember that this summer we sailed past Caldey Island in South Wales. Also, a few years ago we anchored behind Caldey Island when we were crewing on someone else's boat. But unfortunately you aren't allowed to land on the island from your own boat. So we've been really dying to have a look around, and now that the sailing season is over, we thought that we would get the ferry over to the island and see what there is to see. I did actually go to Caldey once before with my family when I was about 8 years old, but I didn't really remember it, and Nick had never been at all, so we were both really excited to have a look around. Caldey Island is about 1.5 miles long by a mile wide, and it is located about a mile from the town of Tenby in South Wales. Tenby is where the ferries leave from. One of the most interesting things about Caldey Island is it is owned by a group of monks, and they rely heavily on tourism to make a living, and quite famously they make chocolate and soap which they sell. It's quite hard to find numbers on how many monks are currently on the island, but it seems like it's probably only about 8 at the moment. But the total population of the island is about 40 because they also hire people to work for them. So on the morning that we wanted to go to the island, we checked their Facebook page because they put out updates to say whether the boats are running on any given day. Quite often because of the sea conditions they aren't able to run, so it's always a good idea to check before going. But luckily they were running, so we got in the car and headed to Tenby. So the Facebook page had mentioned that the kiosk where you buy the tickets was closed and that we would need to buy them at the tractor. Now, we weren't really sure what that meant, but as we headed down to the beach we saw a tractor parked there, and it had a mobile metal jetty attached to it. We spoke to the guy in the tractor and he said we would need to wait until the next boat came in. So we sat down to eat our sandwiches, and after only about 10 minutes we saw the boat coming in. So we paid our money and got on board. The crossing only takes about 20 minutes, so it is quite a short trip. As we approached the island, we came alongside a wide concrete jetty. Someone on the boat mentioned that the jetty is actually made out of old boats, and we were quite intrigued by that, so we did a little bit more research, and it turns out that they are concrete barges that were used in the Second World War. So in the 50s the barges were brought over to Caldey and sunk, and then one of the monks filled them with concrete, and then later on in the 90s they were concreted over again. But if you look at them from above you can actually still see the shape of the barges, so we thought that was really interesting. So once we got off the boat we set off to do some exploring. After only a few minutes of walking we came to what is known as the village. So that's basically a small collection of buildings which includes a gift shop and a post office. From the village you can also see the monastery, which was built apparently between 1910 and 1912. After walking a little way out of the village we came to the old Priory, which is where a previous group of monks would have lived in medieval times. The monastic buildings there are not occupied anymore, but the church there apparently is still consecrated. Near the old Priory we also saw the chocolate factory. You can't really go in and see the factory itself, unfortunately, but they do have a little shop in the front, and there's some amazing smells coming out of it. It smells very chocolatey. After that we headed on towards a quieter part of the island, and part of the reason for that was Nick was very keen to see Santop Bay, which was where we had anchored a few years previously. We did eventually find it, but it turns out you can't easily climb down to the beach, but we were able to look at it from above and get a pretty good view. Then we turned back and went to have a look at the lighthouse. It's kind of an unusually sort of short and stubby lighthouse. It was built in 1829 and it is still operational, but apparently it was only converted to mains electricity in the 90s, presumably because of the difficulty of getting electricity on the island. From the lighthouse we started walking back towards the village. And that was when we saw something which we got very excited about, and that was a squirrel. And if you're not from the UK you might not understand why this is so exciting, but essentially the species of squirrel that is native to the UK is the red squirrel. However, in the 1800s grey squirrels from America were introduced into the UK and they were able to outcompete the red squirrels and also passed viruses onto them. And so the red squirrels kind of got pushed right to the fringes, and in most areas you will never see one, and neither of us had ever seen a red squirrel before. However, there has been an effort to conserve red squirrels, and in 2016 they were introduced back onto Caldey Island. An island obviously makes sense as a location because there's not much chance of grey squirrels swimming across the sea and colonising the island. Apparently now there are about 60 red squirrels on the island, and we were lucky enough to see not one but two of them. We did get a little bit of film. It was from quite a distance, we couldn't get any closer without scaring it. It was really lovely to see. Back at the village we went into the gift shop and bought some of the chocolate. I was pleased to see that they do two types of dark chocolate and both of them are dairy free, so I was able to have some, which was nice. And after that we still had a little bit of time left before our boat back, and so we headed over to St David's Church, which is the parish church of the island, and it apparently dates back to Norman times. We aren't religious, but we do appreciate the architecture of old churches, and so we went in and had a look. We also saw another church, but this one it seems is part of the monastery and you aren't allowed to go inside, but we did admire it from the outside. Then we hurried back towards the jetty to get on our boat, and as we came down to the jetty we could see the boat approaching in the distance, but it stopped out in the bay. It turned out that was because it was a very low tide and the boat wasn't able to come all the way in. So instead what they do is they have a tractor type thing with a trailer on it which you get into, and they basically drive you out to the boat. So that was quite interesting. I do remember when I went previously with my family, they had some kind of amphibious vehicle, which I believe was ex-military, and they would use that instead, but they don't seem to be using that at the moment. So they transferred us from the trailer to the boat, and then we headed back to Tenby again. And that was our day. So we had a really lovely time. It was a really nice place. The more I think back on it, the more I realise what a good time we had. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit different to our usual videos. Please do like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and we will see you next time.